Welcome to Let's Talk Surrogacy, where we explore all things surrogacy, the journeys, the insights, and the remarkable people along the way. Today, I have a very special guest, Meg. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we just really want to get to know how you decided upon becoming a surrogate.
Sure, yeah. So I actually have 4 kids of my own, and my first 2 pregnancies were conceived very easily and quickly, kind of just like hey, let's have a baby kind of situation. And with my third one, I actually sort of struggled, not really in the realm of people with fertility issues, but in that instance, not being able to get pregnant for like 2 or 3 months really freaked me out. And so it just sort of set something off in my mind that I was like, oh my gosh, like people really struggle getting pregnant. And so I made the decision after my third, when our family was complete, that I was going to become a surrogate and help a family if I could.
First of all, I want to commend you. That's a really beautiful thing to have that kind of empathy, go through a kind of an experience that kind of changed your insights into all of it, and then to be able to then go shift and do something good with it. So what did your husband say when you brought this to him?
So again, like after my third pregnancy and the small struggle we had, I always told him, hey, I want to be a surrogate. And he was like, okay, cool. And so then when I actually like signed up to become it, I didn't tell him until literally we were getting ready to like meet our intended parents. And I was like, hey, by the way, we have this thing called a match call and you need to be on there. And he's like, what is it? And I was like, oh, remember when I told you I wanted to be a surrogate? Yeah, I did that. I signed up and we're meeting the people tonight. And he was like, okay, so we're doing this thing. Yeah. So he knows that I'm always kind of crazy like that, but he's very supportive. He was there 100% of the entire way. He loved every second of it. And so, he was there. He was there for it. He was excited and he accepted it. So,
well, that's amazing because like I can speak from my own personal pregnancy journeys. They're not always easy. The man seems to suffer a little bit at our whims of, whether it's cravings or sore feet or whatever it is. So first, that's just beautiful that your husband was so open to that.
He also knew he didn't really have a choice. I mean,
you're your own person.
Yeah, my own person. Yeah. I'm gonna do kind of what I want, and I did have easier pregnancies, so he knew it would probably, hopefully be the same. So he was on board with it.
So what age were you when you did your first surrogacy?
My very first one, because I've done 2, my first one, I was 31. And then my second one, I was 35.
Okay.
So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So with all of that being said and all of the decision-making that you made, did you have any mental obstacles that came up either before or throughout the process or maybe even after?
So I think as a first-time surrogate, you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. So a lot of it is just uncertainty of the unknown. Not knowing how you're going to handle IVF medications. Like I never did IVF, so I didn't know how would I do that? You know, how would the shots go and does it hurt and how long do I take them? So the mental obstacle is just really being okay with not knowing what to expect next and just having to trust the process, trust the journey, communication, and having support system along the way.
Well, since you spoke about the IVF, I would love to know a little bit more about how that affected your body, how that affected your mindset, how it affected your family.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was definitely interesting. I mean, tons of women have gone through IVF, not just become a surrogate. And so I knew it was obviously something like I could do, but I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have a ton of side effects. I guess a lot of people think, are you going to be super hormonal, mood swings, all the things?
Sure.
I didn't really have that. I mean, I had some weight gain, which of course isn't super exciting, but with pregnancy, it's going to happen.
It's preparation.
I know, right? You're like, okay, I knew this was happening. But I think the hardest part is just mentally preparing for those needles. People can tell each other blue in the face, like it hurts, but until you go through it, you don't actually know. You do get some bruises and some knots kind of on your back. And that is kind of like a residual pain that lasts for the duration of the pregnancy. Even though the shots are finished, the knots and bruising is still kind of there for a while. So just not knowing that, but then like realizing that. So then the second journey, I was much more prepared. I was able to, know what to do to help ease some of that stuff for the next time. But yeah, I mean, do I want to do IVF just for fun? Heck no.
Sure.
But I mean, I'm so thankful I didn't have to do it for my own, and I only did it twice. So
now, okay, just to get a little more clarity, when you took these injections, Was it every day? Was it once a week? How did that work?
Yeah, so the clinic will send you like a med calendar of like when to take everything. So some shots are just once a day. Some shots were twice a day. Some of them are like in your stomach. Some of them are sort of in your like lower hip. And then there's also just like, for one journey, I had to do patches. So it's like a patch that went on your arm. You just changed it every single day. Others, I just took a pill, like a little blue pill, the estrogen though. So I took that like 3 times a day, I think, just different times throughout the day. But the clinic is very good at sending you like exactly when to take it, how to take it to be the most successful with it.
Yeah, because I could imagine that could be kind of overwhelming if, you've got this laundry list of different injection sites and different medications, and this one goes subcutaneously, this one's intramuscular, or this,
Right,
so
yeah.
I imagine that could be overwhelming to someone who doesn't know what to expect.
Yes, and I just set tons of alarms on my phone. Some of them have to be taken at the exact same time every single day. So, if it was like we were going to be going out or there was an event, I was like, okay, I have to bring this with me.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that always, just to kind of like mentally note, I didn't know that in the beginning. Like, oh, this has to be taken at 7 o'clock every single day. And you think, oh, sure, that's not a big deal. But then you're like, oh, I'm at my kid's school,
Sure.
school carnival. Let me just go in the bathroom and whip out a shot. Like, it's a little weird sometimes, but you get used to it. And it's just all of those things that you didn't know beforehand. So yeah, it's just, I think mentally kind of strange, but physically it was fine.
Well, and I would imagine one might think, because you are being incentivized monetarily, that like it's like a job, and so you want to do it to your best ability. You don't want to miss the window, and that puts a little pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I was never really driven monetarily. It was more so like, I don't want to mess this up for these parents. Like, this could be their one shot. Like, they're putting all of their eggs in me. Like, literally, all your eggs in one basket. Like, all right now. So, like, I need to do this exactly right because I don't want that guilt of knowing, like, I missed this shot and maybe that's why I didn't get pregnant.
Sure.
So, money, yes, it was great. But for me, it was more so just the responsibility of knowing, like, these people's goals, their dreams, their futures were like relying on me to stick with what was required. So.
Which is really altruistic. That's really pretty amazing, because I would imagine, and I don't know statistically, if the majority of surrogates do this for money, or if in your case that they do it because they suffer, had a small struggle and want to pay it forward.
Right. I mean, I think to put yourself in this situation, there's definitely more altruistic thoughts.
Yeah.
The compensation is definitely a nice little side bonus, you know? I mean, we didn't really have any big plans for it. We just planned to like save it or use it for whatever would be needed. But at the same time, like the second journey was a little bit like, okay, I know what I'm going through. This time, while I still didn't do it for the compensation, it was more so like, well, now I know what I'm going to do with the compensation this time because I know I can go through this.
Sure.
So.
Well, someone in your position, I feel like is just so valuable as a resource to women who are interested, who've committed. Like, I just think that's a really awesome role that you're now playing, again, to pay it forward.
Yeah.
I
definitely think it helped ease the intended parents, knowing that I was like an experience. They knew that I could, follow through with the commitment of the meds. And then just obviously I successfully, had a journey before. So I do think it definitely eased the intended parent's mind knowing that I had gone through before. Yeah.
Well, and you think about that with anything in life, really. It's a lot easier to listen to suggestions when you know someone has walked before you, whether it be an alcohol addiction or, whatever it is. It's like, oh, then you actually do understand how I'm feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. So much empathy needs to happen in a surrogate journey. And if it's not there, it can really turn a journey south, honestly. So,
well, I would love to know how you chose the family. What was your criteria? Explain that to me.
So going into it, I just was like, I want to help anyone have a baby. So I didn't have any criteria.
Okay.
And that was actually not awesome. Like, I don't recommend that. And that's one of the first things I say to people when they're going through a journey, like, really be specific on who you can work with. And I still, I can get along with anyone, but there are certain things that you really do want to have the same, thoughts on. So our very first the first profile they sent to me, I was also like, who am I to say this person should have a baby over this person, you know? So I was like, I'll just have a baby for anyone. I'll take the first profile you send me. And we did. And we met with them. And I was like, no. Like, I cannot match with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very different lifestyles, which wasn't a big issue, but they just, to us, felt unrealistic. Maybe because we'd already had 4 kids, so we kind of know how life with kids is, and they're their own people, and you can't have these weird expectations of your children. And these people had a plan for their future child that we just felt was like, what if it's not that way? And they were like, but it will be this way. And so I was like, okay, this isn't the perfect fit. So that's when I took a step back and was like, okay, so what do I really want in an independent parent? So,
what was that, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely more like down-to-earth people. Well, I mean, I'm a true crime junkie. So, you know, I think we're a special kind of breed, us true crime junkie people. So I was like, I need someone that, you know, is like, can understand that. But really what it was is I needed someone who understood that, yes, I'm here to do this amazing thing for you, and I will do everything in my power to make this as successful as possible. But I have my own family.
Yeah.
So you need to understand that if you text me, it might be a hot minute before he texts you back. Like, give me some space, but trust the process.
So it sounds like you were really good with boundaries.
Yes, I really needed someone good with boundaries, and then someone just with really good communication. Responding back, I mean, yes, I might not respond right away, but please still respond if I send you a text, you know. But then also don't, like, overbear me.
Right.
You know,
ting,
like,
ting, ting, ting,
yes.
ting.
So, so it was that. But then also just similar views on things like, you know, religion and politics. Not that we had to be like exactly eye to eye, but it really does play a huge part.
Well, I'm sure with connecting with them,
Yeah.
if you're like polar opposites.
It can definitely strain
I'm a
them.
Democrat, you're a Republican,
Yeah.
and it's very contentious. You know, that could
You
be.
do think that you can handle being so different, but you find out that it can really play a big part.
So would you say that that's a bit of a cautionary, like, really pay attention to that?
Yeah. Yes. And I think also, like, really ask the hard questions in the beginning, because I think my first journey I didn't. I will never take my first journey and say it was terrible, but it definitely was not as ideal as it could have been. I learned a lot that first journey, which is the reason I did a second journey, which was beautiful, and I'm still best friends with my IPs. So I definitely think, there's a lot that goes into that first matching process and making sure you line out what's important to you in an independent parent. So,
well, isn't that amazing? Like, if we have enough insight, we do learn from the things that weren't exactly the greatest experiences. I think of that in everything in life. If we can use it as fuel and an opportunity for growth and change, like, that's a really great story.
100%.
Yeah. I'm curious, since you've done 2 journeys, how did you know where to go as far as an agency, or did you do it independently, and why? What were the decisions around that?
Yeah, so I knew nobody who had done surrogacy, and I didn't really have a lot of resources. I feel like there wasn't that much back on the internet back in those days. Like, I'm so old. So I did what anyone would do, though, is I did hop on Google and just typed in surrogacy agencies, and I think like 3 or 4 popped up. I literally called all 4 of them and had kind of like an initial interview call with them, and just kind of got a vibe for who, you know, unfortunately, whoever that caseworker was that day was the person that I had a vibe with. And if I didn't, then I just kind of checked him off the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I did choose to go the agency route because I didn't know anything. Like, I literally knew nothing about surrogacy. I just figure you want to have a baby for someone, you tell someone you'll have your baby, done. You know, I didn't know anything about IVF even, and, you know, legal contracts and all that. So I didn't really know how to do an independent one if I wanted to. So that's why I was like, I'll just pick an agency. So
yeah, I would imagine that would be a much tougher route and put a lot of the onus on the surrogate to have to figure all of that out. I would think an agency would just be...
Well, and, you know, I mean, again, horror stories. I grew up on, you know, Lifetime movies over here. So I'm like, what if I have the baby for someone and then, you know, they don't show up and they don't take the baby. I don't want to keep the baby.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I mean, again, I wasn't doing it for the money, but at the same time, like, what if they didn't pay me, or I get stuck with all these bills? So there were so many, like, just what ifs for me with going the independent route for a first time. So I went with the agency because I felt more like secure and safe that they would, you know, have my back and make sure that everything was done properly and legally and all the things. So I could have gone independent my second time, But I just built such a great relationship with my surrogate specialist that I was like, why would I? Why would I? You know, like why? It was so simple. They handled everything. So it just made sense to me to go the agency route again. I loved my agency. I mean, they were fantastic. So.
Yeah, I would think that just having that peace of mind, knowing that there's a third party that's involved in that, to me, as an outsider looking in, it seems like kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, it really was. It really makes it so simple for the surrogate. Just sign here, dot here, you know, have a baby, bam, you're done.
Do you think from agency to agency there's differences in their competence and their level of caring and follow through?
Yes, 1,000,000%. There are some agency, well, you know, you never want to feel like a number.
Right.
Especially if it's your first time. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or where I'm supposed to be going or who I'm supposed to be contacting. And so having someone there that you feel really supported with and that stays with you through the whole journey, because being passed off like to too many people, like you're kind of just like lost still. Like you're like, okay, I know that someone here can help me, but I'm not sure who I'm supposed to reach out to if I have a question because I've talked to 5 people. So I do think the agency matters. That's why doing those initial interviews and like getting, you know, asking some of those questions on like, are you my specialist the whole time? Or, you know, do you transfer me off? Or, you know, things like that are really, really important for a first-time surrogate to know.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that you really recommend kind of vetting whom you might actually end up working with. Like 100%. Take the time to get to know, to find out the process, to make your checklist and get through that with each agency that you're considering.
Right. Compensation should not be the reason you pick an agency. It should really be the support factor that they offer.
Yeah.
Because, well, 9 out of 10 times you could probably get the compensation you want anyway, but you can't always get that support.
Yeah.
You know, and
so the agency matters.
The agency matters so much.
So how did you notice this pregnancy or your surrogacy journeys? How do they differ, like physically?
I always did have pretty easy pregnancies. So my first journey, I will say, was very similar to my own. Except for extreme nausea, which when you already have 4 other kids was not super fun. I mean, my kids were in a lot of events and activities, and so I would have to drive them to these things. And I mean, I don't know that there was ever a time that we did not have to pull over in the car because I had to throw up, you know? And so in that regard, it was definitely harder just to kind of play it off. I didn't want this to ever like affect my kids so much, like have them like resent a surrogate, you know, or just the thing that because this was like something that I chose to do, not my family. So physically that was hard. I would say that I was probably tired, but I also, again, I didn't really want my kids to know. So I would just try to like sleep when they would, you know, take naps and things like that because they were smaller. But the second one physically was harder. It was a different nationality than me. And so the baby was much bigger. It sat much lower, and I ended up having to have a C-section because the baby was too big for like my own body. So that was very different for me because I had always just had these little petite babies, and you know, it wasn't really that hard. But the last one was difficult. I was tired, grumpy because I was tired, grumpy because it was just a lot. So,
well, and it's funny how they say, "Oh, your second one's no big deal." Yeah. I'm with you. My second one was much harder than the first physically on me.
Something to note as a surrogate is like when you have your own baby, it's genetically yours. You know, genetically your husband's. You kind of know what to expect. But a surrogate baby is genetically not connected to you in any way. It's not your DNA at all. So it does have. I mean, if that family has something in their genetics, it obviously can be in the baby. So the pregnancy does not have to be like yours at all. It can be too big for your body or, you know, have some health issues. And so I think that's something that surrogacy and surrogates don't fully know, that those things can happen.
Well, it makes a lot of sense.
So to be prepared for that, like, because it's not genetically connected and that can cause some issues.
Yeah, you're the vessel.
Yes, you're just the vessel. But that baby's still going to grow genetically how it's supposed to, and it's got to come out. So good luck.
You're carrying someone else's child. You're going through all of the emotions and the physicality of that. How did you handle that? Did you have any things that came up during that process emotionally?
Yeah, this is the thing that I probably get asked the most is like, how do you, grow a baby and then just give it away is often what people will say. But it's really the reframing your mind of saying you're just giving the baby back. It's a completely different process than getting pregnant yourself. You are going through the IVF process. And in that process, you're literally talking to so many people all the time. When you get pregnant yourself, it's you and your husband. You're pregnant, you tell people when and that's it. But with this, there's so many people involved that it never really felt like my pregnancy, So it helps you kind of dissociate from that. And then throughout the journey, I was so excited to share those moments with the intended parents. I often kind of tell people it's like Christmas morning and like a gift. Like when you have kids of your own, and you experience Christmas through their eyes, you're so excited to give them that, hoverboard that they were waiting for because their eyes are going to light up. This is that same thing. Throughout this journey, I was so excited for that moment. So I wasn't really emotionally attaching myself because I was so ready for that moment instead.
That's really beautiful. First of all, did the families live in town or were they out of town?
Both my families did not live close.
So, I was just envisioning you feeling the baby kick for the first time. And how do you navigate that? Do you call them up and say, hey, let me FaceTime with you? Or how did that work?
Yeah. So, luckily, technology nowadays is so great. We would FaceTime a lot. For all of my appointments, I would FaceTime so they could hear the heartbeat and see the sonogram so they could see their little baby. Or if I had printed pictures, I would always, mail them to them so they could have them right away. They also, just to kind of help them kind of feel involved and, that their baby was getting to know them, they would, for both my journeys, I had them read a story, on those recordable storybooks. And they would send it back to me. And so then I could just, play the story for them. So they could, hear hear their voice and stuff. And so, yeah, there's just those things you do to just kind of help them feel excited and, let them have their emotions because – I didn't want any more kids, so it was super easy to not be attached. I'm like, I got 4. This one's yours for sure. Please take it.
Well, you wonder if I'm sure that has something to do with the rule of already having, I don't know, is it 1 or 2 children? You already have to have a child of your own in order to be a surrogate.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes. You have to have at least 1 kid. And it really is recommended to be done with your family. It's just best to know that your family's complete, that you're happy with where it's at. So that way it just kind of helps also, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to know, because I would imagine there's a sense of pressure because these people have invested so much in having a baby with you, and did you have a lot of anxiety about potential miscarriages or, God forbid something really terrible happen? How did you navigate that?
Yeah. So I think going into it, because my pregnancies were so simple and, I didn't have any complications that you are, as a first-time surrogate, a bit naive to the fact that there could be things that could arise. You could miscarriage or, there could be just whatever, a health issue coming up. You could get preeclampsia or diabetes this time, and you did it with your own. And again, that kind of relates back to the genetics being different. So the first time, I didn't think anything of it, and it was a very smooth pregnancy. Now, my second journey, I did end up miscarrying at 12 weeks, and that was something I had never experienced. Both physically, that was very challenging just because, it was painful. There was a lot to go through. But then mentally, it was going through the loss as a woman.
Yeah.
But then, feeling that pressure.
Yeah, or disappointment, oh my gosh.
So much disappointment, so much guilt on your shoulders, oh my gosh, I did it 5 times before. What the heck just happened? And everything was going so well until it wasn't. And yeah, you just feel this overwhelming sense of guilt and failure. And it's just hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
How did you navigate through that? Did you just kind of suffer through it or?
Women, we suffer through things. That's what we do. But you just rely on your support system. My husband was there for me. My best friends were there for me. And then the agency, I was able to talk to my specialist and this is normal and this can happen and this is IVF, talking to the clinic and, this is normal. And so just understanding that this can happen. And we were super successful the second time around, did another transfer,
So did those intended parents have any doubts about potentially doing another surrogacy with you, or did they ever express that?
I'm sure that they were, scared and concerned. But they also, understand the percentage of success rate for IVF and just embryos that aren't yours because they had adopted embryos. So, they were cautiously optimistic the entire time, as I think most intended parents are. If you're in this situation, there's a strong possibility that you already had some, failure in this. So you do kind of tread lightly. So as excited as they were that I was pregnant, they were not shocked when I miscarried.
Yeah. Because of their own experience.
Yeah, because of their own experience. And so, I think they probably handled it better than I did, more so than they weren't, they were like, it's not your fault. Like, we're not mad at you. Like, this just happened. So we'll try again. So, they never really said that they were upset and didn't want to try again. And thank goodness, because we did. And
success.
Success. And he's beautiful. So,
yeah. After you've given birth and you give the baby to their parents, do you stay connected with them? Do you get pictures of the baby? I know in adoptions, a lot of times it's open, but curious how that works with surrogacy.
Yeah. So again, that's kind of one of those things that you kind of figure out in the beginning, like what each person is comfortable with. My first intended parents, I'm not as close with. Again, it was not a perfect journey. I'm very thankful for them. And they do send me a yearly update on her birthday, which is great, but it kind of just ends there. And that's great. Like I'm happy I just want to know, that they're thriving and that they're happy and it's a beautiful little family. And it is. My second journey, I'm very close with my intended parents still. We talk weekly still through text. They send me tons of pictures. We just chat about all the things, weather and, TV shows and all of the things. So I think it can just really vary on how the connection goes throughout and just, just connecting with that person in general, just like any relationship. So
sure. Well, and I think that is really cool. I mean, one thought that came to mind was, do their children, and I don't know how old both of your pregnancies now are, or surrogates are now, but like, do they know that they were carried in someone else's body? Or is that something their parents plan to share with them?
Right. Definitely something to ask the intended parents. My first journey, have not told her yet, but they do plan to tell her. It's not so much that I think they're trying to keep it a secret as much as just trying to wait till she's older and she can understand more so. Why is there no pictures of, me, like, me in your belly, Mom, kind of things like that. And we do have pictures and I made them a book. So when they're ready to give it to her, like that, they have that to give to her. But the second set was a same-sex couple. And so, yes, they very open with, how they came about.
Biology,
and,
yes.
It's like, and I've gone to his birthday parties. He knows who I am. Like, he just thinks I'm a fun, like, aunt. And so, he's very
And
aware.
how old are those?
Yeah, so my first one is almost 7 and my second one is 4.
Oh, how awesome.
Yeah, so she started kindergarten this year. She's very sweet. She's very tall, which if you know me, my family's very short. So that's also like, okay, check. She's not mine.
Right. There wasn't a mix-up in the lab.
No mix-up, yeah. And then, my second one is in preschool and so cute and super fun.
It's like you get this extended family, really, and people that are kind of, if it's a good experience, obviously, but like connected to you through the web for life.
For life, yeah, even if it wasn't like a stellar experience, like it still doesn't take away from like what I did and what I created, and it's like out there, and it's very cool to know that they exist because I was willing to do this for them. So it's very cool, and I'm very thankful for the entire process.
So after the baby came, it went with its parents. How did you have any postpartum depression or issues, or with your body just having to bounce back? And who was your support person during that?
So I think as a woman, as a mom, kids come first always. Literally my first surrogacy journey was born at 11:52 p.m. and my daughter's birthday was the next morning. So I was like, I got to get out of this place because I got to get home to my daughter's, birthday. Yeah. And so I just like popped the baby out and I literally was home by 11 the next morning to transition back into momhood. And I wanted to make it as seamless and easy for my kids so that I was, not pregnant anymore, like mom's back, full on, like I'm here for you. And so I think just going back into full mom mode really just, helped me just kind of get over being pregnant,
Yeah. Like anything that may have even come
Yeah.
up, you're like, don't have time
Don't
for
have
it.
time.
I'm back
It's
hitting the
summer,
ground
we're
running.
going to the pool. Like,
Yeah.
I was sick a lot and I was tired, and you're pregnant and you're having this
Sure.
baby. And so I just wanted to get straight back into like our own personal life and be there for my kids. And so I honestly just think being busy just kind of helped. The first journey was obviously a little bit harder than the second. The second journey, we were still in so much contact, and they were sending me so many pictures and updates like multiple times a day that also does help, knowing how loved the baby was, and like they were asking me, tips and tricks. And so you just still felt involved.
Yeah.
So it was really just kind of a fun transition to go from, carrying the baby to now like being a support person for them.
Yeah.
So it was just, you just feel like valued then and appreciated, and it just makes it fun.
Sorry. What were the ages of your children as you, like during your first surrogacy?
Yeah.
journey?
So I applied when my youngest was 2. And so they would have been 2, 4, 6, and 9 for my first one. So very little still. Yeah. But, I was like, I want to do this before I'm too old.
You're like, I'm an overachiever.
I know. So let's just knock it out. Like, I'm on a 2-year track here. Let's just keep it going. So I just did that. But then having my husband there to be supportive is also what like made it possible. Like picking up the slack when I am feeling sick and just being like, hey, you're on kid duty tonight. And he was always like super like, okay, I got it, or a lot of times he would just take them out of the house for me because he knew that I wouldn't willingly like send them somewhere. So he'd be like, oh, I'm going to take them, to the movies or whatever. And so just having him there. My girlfriends were super supportive too. And I like coached cheerleading. And so my teammates, like my teams were all so supportive. They like threw like a little baby shower for the baby. We would go get like mani-pedis, if I wasn't like feeling well, they'd be like, let's go pamper you. And, so just having that support makes it so much easier.
And it sounds like your support also like anticipated your needs. They didn't wait for you to ask, hey, I really need that. Because as you know, as a mom, it's oftentimes hard to say, hey, I need a break. I need time for myself. We just tend to kind of go. And to have people in your life who actually say, we're not going to wait for her to ask. We're just going to do. And
100%.
What would you recommend to someone who's considering this process with their partner, that they have a very strong, stable relationship?
Yeah, do you have to be married? No. But do you have to have a village behind you to not just like help out with your kids, but like anticipate some of those needs that you undoubtedly aren't going to ask for ahead of time? Having people there to see that you're tired and just take that on before you can crumble is super important.
Well, you ought to write a book, a little instructional how-to, the tips and tips for surrogacy.
Yes. I do. I wish more people relied on other people during a surrogacy.
Yeah.
And I'm the first person who won't rely on anyone for anything ever. But for surrogacy, it's super important. There's a lot of emotions involved. And even if you're not an emotional person or attached to the baby, there's still a lot. And even in a perfect journey like my second one was, it does not mean that there was not times that were harder than others that you're kind of like, oh my gosh, okay, like, 3 more months, like, let's just get through this. So,
well, and I also wondered too, was there ever a moment that your husband was a little resentful? Like, I'm kind of carrying more of the load because you're pregnant and you don't feel good. And that would be normal for anyone, I think, at some point. But did you experience that?
I don't know that my husband really ever had resentment, just because he was always like, you're awesome for even just doing this, like, keep it up. But I do feel like the kids sort of, just because there was times where I just was not going to get off the couch today. And it is another Disney day, sorry, and they would just be like, let's go do this. And I would say, sorry, guys, like, the baby's just making mom not feel good today. And they would be like, when is this baby going to get out? Like, we just want you back,
Yeah.
Which gives that mom guilt. And then you're like, that's when you just get up. You're like, okay, you're right. I feel fine. I'll puke in the freaking bathroom at the pizza place. It's fine,
Yeah.
So I don't think that my husband ever did, but I do think my kids, even though you tell them they're young, they didn't quite understand just what goes into it. So,
well, and that leads me to my next question, especially for your 2-year-old, like, mom's having a baby, everyone's talking about it, and then baby's gone. How do you reconcile that? How does that work?
Yeah. We definitely had a lot of conversations like, mom and dad can have a baby, but we're going to help someone else who can't have a baby, like, mom's just going to carry it and then just give it back. I mean, there's a lot of books that you can read to your kids too. But ultimately what was the most helpful was them coming to the hospital and seeing the babies. And just kind of like seeing the baby with their parents, and then they could kind of see, you know, like, okay, well, we're leaving and the baby's not coming home.
Yeah.
So they like were able to associate like, oh, okay, yeah, it's not our baby.
Right.
You know, so.
Interesting.
I think just keeping them super involved in the process is really important. Not trying to keep anything a secret or hide anything is really helpful for them to understand, you know, it's not our baby.
Yeah.
But then also just like kind of explaining like the gift of it and like how great it is to do something so selfless and like, you know, help someone that otherwise couldn't have a family.
You're like, Mom is awesome.
Yeah. You know, I don't think they thought it then. I think it now, but back then
sure.
they were like, you know, why aren't we going to the movies? So.
Yeah. So for any surrogate that's out there, or a potential surrogate, what do you think is the most important piece of advice that you might share, or piece of wisdom?
Well, the first thing that anyone needs to know when coming into this is that it is a journey and it is completely unexpected. You do not know what's going to happen. Your past pregnancies are really not indicative of what this pregnancy could be. And so just fully knowing that you're going into the unknown and being okay with that. Like, that's what I always tell everyone. Like, you got to be okay with not calling the shots and being in control of, I mean, you're not in control of even your body for a small bit of time, you know, like just accepting that. And then, just like embracing the intended parents and like, you had to put yourself in their shoes. A lot of times they might come off in a certain way, and just understanding that it's usually coming out of fear and heartbreak, and that they don't mean to be, you know, cold or harsh, or it's not that they're, you know, sad about a certain thing or overly excited or not overly excited that there's a heartbeat. Like, they're just so cautious.
Yeah.
And just really understanding that just because you're so excited and they don't seem it doesn't mean they aren't. They're just really, really holding in all of their emotions until the end because they're so scared the entire time.
So it sounds like you're saying to lessen your expectations, or try and remove expectations of how that intended family may react to anything.
Right. Yeah, because you know what? This is real life, and it's not the Facebook highlights. You know, a journey is almost 2 years long, and what you see on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is a 10-second splurt of how awesome a journey is, and they're beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to them, and so just fully knowing that ahead of time, that, you know, when you're signing up for this, it's a thing, it's a commitment, and it's a journey, and you're going to come out a totally changed person on the other side.
Well, I really want to thank you for being so open and transparent and informative and educational for people who are considering this, who, you know, really don't have an understanding. And your story is beautiful. And I just think it's really, really, really cool. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.